The story of Fatima is a very beautiful story. It's a true story. It's a story that we're still living through. It's a story that you're a participant of, whether you realize it or not. But to understand the beginning of the story, we have to look at what was going on in the world at that time. In 1917, World War I was still raging. It was called World War I because it was the greatest war that the world had ever seen. There have been 14,000 wars, more than 14,000 wars in the history of mankind. And this is the first war of those 14,000 to be called World War. World War I was raging. It started 3 years before. Pope Pius X was the Pope at the beginning. He was really the first casualty of this war. He died shortly after it opened. He died of a broken heart. This war, World War I, was the war to end all wars. Now we know how false that is today, but that's how they sold it to people. We'll fight this war, and this war will be the war to end all wars. Now, Pope Benedict XV took his place. Pope Benedict XV remained entirely neutral, and the Vatican remained entirely neutral during this war. It's the only country in Europe pretty well that stayed neutral. Now, Pope Benedict called this war useless, a useless slaughter, a war against religion, civilization, and terribly bad. Of course, we can all look back and say that, but at that time, war fever was running high. Now let us remember that the Pope was a diplomat. Pope Benedict XV was a diplomat. He had tried for 3 years to find a way to bring peace to the world. He tried everything. And he realized by May of 1917 that human efforts alone were useless. And so he appealed to the Blessed Virgin Mary, to the Mother of God, in an open letter. He appealed to her in such a strong way, insisting, so to speak, that she come, that she show the Pope and mankind the way to peace. This is what Pope Benedict XV wrote about that. Here's what he wrote. Our earnestly pleading voice, invoking the end of the vast conflict, the suicide of civilized Europe, was then and has remained ever since unheard. Indeed, it seems that the dark tide of hatred grew higher and wider among the belligerent nations and drew other countries into its frightful sweep, multiplying ruin and massacre. Nevertheless, our confidence was not lessened. Since all graces, which the author of all good deigns to grant to the poor children of Adam, by a loving design of his divine providence, are dispensed through the hands of the most holy Virgin, we wish that petition of her most afflicted children, more than ever in this terrible hour, may turn with lively confidence to the august Mother of God. The Pope appealed to the Blessed Virgin to show us the way out. This was on May the 5th, 1917, and just 8 days later, Our Lady responded. She came on the 13th of May, 1917, 8 days later, and she came to 3 children, to Lucy, Jacinta, and Francesco. She came in answer to the Pope's anguished appeal. And that is what we have to understand about Fatima. That Our Lady came in response to our asking her to show us the way to peace. She told us that that her plan is the only way for peace. Now, instead of that, the Pope also warned the fighting nations that the peace should be based on justice, not based on military victory. But they didn't listen to him. And when the Versailles Treaty was formulated, he said, it's a formula for another war worse than this. And Pope Benedict was right. Of course, we all know World War II broke out some 20 years later. Let us remember then that Our Lady came with a plan for peace, the only plan that will work, the plan that the Pope and the people have asked her to come and give us. Unfortunately, up to now, her plan has not been followed, but I'm getting ahead of her story. But this is where you come in, that this is why you are part of the story, because she will bring peace when her requests and her commands are finally heard and listened to. We will talk about this more, but I will soon now talk about Our Lady's first visit to the children on May 13th, 1917. As I mentioned in our previous segment, Pope Benedict XV, the Pope who was there for most of the war, except for the first few days when Pius IX As I mentioned, Pope Benedict XV cried out against World War I. He was a voice crying in the wilderness. He called World War I a useless slaughter, a crime against humanity, against religion, and against civilization. Pope Benedict appealed to the Mother of God to show him and humanity the way to peace. And she came 8 days later to Fatima, to the 3 children, Lucy, Jacinta, and Francesco. They were on the hillside, not far from Fatima, the village of Fatima, in the Cova de Ira, the Cove of Peace. It was there, as the children were playing, they saw a flash of light. It looked like lightning to them, and so they thought there was a storm coming. They gathered their sheep together, and they prepared to go home when they saw a second flash of light. Then standing on the holm oak tree not far from them was the Blessed Virgin Mary. She said, "Do not be afraid. I will not harm you. Come closer." And the children came closer, but at first Francesco could not see her. And he told this to Lucy. And Lucy spoke to Our Lady and said, "Francis doesn't see you. Francesco doesn't see you." And she said, "Tell him to pray his rosary." So Francesco took out his rosary and started to pray the rosary. Then he too could see Our Lady, but he never could hear her speak. It was only Jacinta and Lucy that could hear her speak. It was Lucy, on the other hand, who was the only one who spoke to Our Lady in the Cova de Ira. Now, Our Lady told them that she was from heaven. Lucy asked, "Where are you from?" She said, "I am from heaven." "What do you want of me?" "I want you to come here for the next 6 months, today and another 5 times. I want you to come here to and at the same place at the same time, and I will tell you what I want." So Lucy asked about her friend. She asked about a person about 18 years old, a friend of hers, who had died recently. She said, "She is in heaven." That was Maria. Maria das Neves is in heaven. Then she asked about Amelia, and Our Lady told her, Amelia is in purgatory, and she will be in purgatory until the end of the world. Now that's a long time. So let us pray for Amelia. Now, the Blessed Virgin had the rosary in her hand, and she told the children she wanted them to pray the rosary every day for peace in the world. So the first request Our Lady gave in answer to the Pope's request was that we pray the rosary. We pray the rosary every day. Let us remember to do that. Then the Blessed Virgin opened her hands. But before she did that, she asked the children, first of all, if they were willing to make sacrifices for sinners. And the children, Lucy answering in the name of the other 2, said, "Yes, we're willing to do that." So then Our Lady opened her hands. And when she opened her hands, light came from the palms of her hands and fell on the hearts of the 3 children. And in this light, the children had an experience of heaven. They felt like they were in heaven. And they were very, very happy. Our Lady told them that, yes, you will go to heaven, Lucy. And yes, Jacinta and Francesco also. But Francesco must pray many rosaries first before he goes to heaven. So they had a foretaste of heaven. Now this is very important because when we see what happened in July, you'll understand why it's so important. They had this foretaste of heaven in May. Let us, above all, remember that our goal in life is to get to heaven. Everything else doesn't matter compared to that. And the children understood that going to heaven is the most important thing. Our Lady promised to take the 3 children to heaven. We'll be back in a moment to talk about what else Our Lady said and did on May 13th. When Our Lady opened her hands and the light came from her hands, the children fell on their knees spontaneously, and they said this prayer. Our Lady did not actually tell them the words, but they said this prayer together. O most holy Trinity, I adore thee. My God, I love thee in the most blessed sacrament. O most holy Trinity, I adore thee. My God, I love thee in the most blessed sacrament. This is one of the 7 prayers, and we should pray it every day. The children then were told also by Our Lady that they would have much to suffer, but that the grace of God would be with them to help them, because they had offered themselves to accept all the sufferings that God sent them in reparation for sins and for the conversion of sinners. When Francesca was told, when Our Lady then, shortly after, went up to heaven, she finished speaking, and they saw her going off into the immensity of space until they could see her no more. Then they told Francesco what happened and what was said. Francesco was very happy, and he crossed his arms, saying, "O Blessed Lady, I will pray as many rosaries as you want." He was so happy that he was promised to go to heaven. Now, the experience that the children had, this time was quite different from the angel, because they were filled with joy. Instead of being, shall we say, almost overwhelmed by the sense of the supernatural, Our Lady's appearance gave them a sense of joy and expansiveness. And Jacinta said, "Oh, what a beautiful lady. Oh, what a beautiful lady." And Lucy said, "Oh, I can see you're going to tell everybody about it." And Jacinta, "No, I won't. But when she went home, Jacinta, being so full of joy, told her mother, and her mother told her father. And that brings us to what happened next. Jacinta was full of joy, and she told her mother, but her mother didn't believe her. And she said something like, "Oh, you must be a little saint to be seeing Our Lady." But Jacinta insisted. And Ty Marto, their father, knew the children didn't lie. He was convinced from the beginning, but he was very careful not to say that right away. He knew that his children would never have told lies, and from the description Jacinta gave, he knew she couldn't have thought it up herself. It was so beautiful, but the reaction at their cousin's house, that is, Antonio, Lucy's father, was there when Jacinta told this, and Antonio and others brought the story back to Lucy's mother. Lucy's mother did not believe at all. And she was very angry with Lucy, and she thought that Lucy was lying. At times she would beat Lucy because she said she was lying. And Lucy explained that I can't say I didn't see. When I did, I'd be lying if I said I didn't see. But Lucy's mother still didn't believe. And it was months, almost until the miracle of the sun, before she came to start to believe. But Lucy's mother was very smart for the people in the village because she could read, and she was the one who taught catechism to the others in the children in the village, not only to Lucy but also to other children there. But Lucy was never resentful against her mother for all this. She realized that Our Lady said that you'd have much to suffer, and she realized that this disbelief and punishment coming from her mother was part of the suffering that Lucy would have to endure. And so it was that the reaction of people is something like we have today. People react to Fatima. Some people believe, and some people take it to heart, and other people reject it. And sometimes even very religious people, even sometimes people who are very intelligent, for some reason don't react like Lucy's mother. They can't believe that God, Our Lady, would be so gracious and kind to them personally, or that they would speak to little children in some far-off village without any instruction. But that's how God works. And that's the reaction that we will see as we continue with this story of Our Lady of Fatima. June 13th was the feast for the village also. He's a patron saint of Portugal. He's also the patron saint of the parish church in Fatima. And there's a great festival held in Fatima. Lucy's mother hoped that Lucy and her 2 cousins would not go to the cova about a mile away, but rather would stay to enjoy the feast and the fun taking place at the festival outside the parish church. But Lucy and Jacinta had given their word to Our Lady that they would be there on June 13th at noon. And so they went. Her parents did not join, but 50 people from the village. The word had spread not just from Magistral, but it had gone to other places not far away. So 50 people, some who were curious, some who believed, some who just wanted to know more, went with the children. Now when the children got there at noon, the people could see a cloud resting on top of the holm oak tree. They could see the tree bend as if someone was standing on top of the tree. But of course only the 3 children saw Our Lady. Our Lady came there, as she said she would, at noon sun time, June 13th. On this occasion, Our Lady again told the children to pray the rosary, to continue to pray the rosary every day. Our Lady also opened her hands a second time. This time, when she opened her hands, first of all, they could see her Immaculate Heart circled with thorns, which pierced her heart. And they understood that this was the Immaculate Heart of Mary, and that the thorns represented sins which offend, which cause Our Lady so much pain. And when she opened her hands, the light came from her hands again, but the light was different this time. The light from one hand fell on Lucy, and then went down to the earth, and the light from the other hand fell on Jacinta and Francesco, and then went up to heaven. In this light, the children understood that Jacinta and Francesco would soon go to heaven, but that Lucy would stay longer on earth. But not only that, Our Lady explained the very same thing. Our Lady said she would come soon to take Jacinta and Francesco to heaven, but that Lucy would stay sometimes longer on earth to make known the Immaculate Heart of Mary. So when Lucy heard this, she was sad. She was sad because she wanted to go to heaven quickly, like her cousins Jacinta and Francesco. And she was sad because she was going to lose the companionship. She enjoyed their friendship very much. And Our Lady saw that Lucy was sad, and she said, "Are you sad, my child? Do not be sad. My Immaculate Heart will be your comfort. My Immaculate Heart will be the way that leads you to God." And so Our Lady told this to Lucy, but she tells it also to us. Do not be sad, my child. If we are faithful to Our Lady, we will also have Our Lady to comfort us and to lead us to heaven. Our Lady then gave them a special grace, the grace to love Our Lady much more. It was a special grace. We should ask for that grace to love Our Lady in a special way, to love her Immaculate Heart. And so the 50 people who were there, who saw the cloud resting on top of the oak tree, who could see when the cloud left that the tree raised up, it wasn't bending anymore. These people told their friends and neighbors, and they told their friends and neighbors. And those 50 people we can thank for passing the word on to the world. It's important to remember that the newspapers already started to turn against Fatima. The government was against it. The priests and the clergy were afraid to talk about it. But the people who went there told their friends and neighbors. And those 50 people told so many people that finally there were 5,000 people who came on July 13th. Now that's a very powerful message to us, to tell our friends and neighbors about the message of Fatima, because so many people do not know the story. Tell them to watch this program. Tell them to write for their free booklet on this. It's important to pass the message on about Fatima to your friends and neighbors.
Sono giunta per avvertire i fedeli che è necessario che facciano ammenda e chiedano perdono per i loro peccati. Non offendano più nostro Signore, che è già molto offeso. Nell'ultima apparizione del 13 settembre 1917, la Madonna mostrò in silenzio lo scapolare del Carmelo, un gesto che indica il suo desiderio che quello stesso scapolare venga indossato da tutti. La Madonna di Fatima ha detto: «Se le mie richieste non verranno esaudite, la Russia diffonderà i suoi orrori in tutto il mondo, provocando guerre e persecuzioni contro la Chiesa. I buoni saranno martirizzati. Il Santo Padre dovrà soffrire molto. Varie nazioni saranno annientate». Buongiorno, Santo Padre. Ieri mattina, guardando la piazza San Pietro, lei mi è sembrato tanto piccolo. In un attimo mi sono resa conto dell'enorme responsabilità che grava su di lei. Perché soltanto lei, Santo Padre, può dare ciò che chiede la Beata Vergine Maria. Solo lei può consacrare la Russia al cuore immacolato di Maria. E solo lei può ordinare ai vescovi di fare altrettanto. Le porto i saluti della gente d'Irlanda. Ho parenti anche in Nuova Zelanda, America e Sudafrica. Dipendiamo tutti da lei. La mia richiesta personale, Santo Padre, è che la vera messa possa essere reintrodotta al più presto, perché possa opporre tutta la sua forza nei confronti di quelle pratiche terribili che vengono permesse ormai da troppo tempo. Visto che non partecipo alla nuova liturgia, posso riportare solo gli esempi che ho visto alla televisione irlandese. Ragazze succinte che ballano in modo provocante all'interno delle chiese. Santo Padre, tutto questo deve essere fermato e solo lei può farlo. Abbiamo davvero bisogno di un padre come il nostro Papa. Ho 83 anni e lei ha 2 anni più di me. Lei ed io sappiamo che ci troviamo nell'ultima fase del nostro cammino terreno, Ma a prescindere da quanto tempo abbiamo ancora a nostra disposizione, la prego di far cessare il prima possibile questo stato di cose che rischia di danneggiare sempre più la nostra Chiesa. Per il bene delle generazioni future dobbiamo tornare a ciò che era la Chiesa di un tempo, a tutto ciò che ci è stato trasmesso sin dal principio. Ecco ciò di cui abbiamo bisogno, la messa tradizionale, la messa di tutti i tempi. L'enciclica Qua Primas di Pio XI lo stabilì chiaramente. Nessuno ha il diritto di cambiare quella messa, eppure è successo. Dobbiamo tornare alla Chiesa come era prima del concilio. Le scuole devono insegnare la vera fede ai nostri figli, poiché ciò che ricevono oggi ne è solo un pallido ricordo. Leggono libri che non insegnano più a pregare, che non parlano più di catechismo, ma invece insegnano cose sul buddismo e l'induismo. Perfino in Irlanda, alcuni cosiddetti insegnanti di religioni non conoscono affatto la fede cattolica. Ecco la situazione in cui ci troviamo. Ma chi può salvarci da tutto questo se non lei? Molti vescovi, a quanto pare, non prendono in considerazione le sue parole. Ma lei ha ancora la forza e il potere di reintrodurre nella Chiesa ciò che è andato perduto, prima che sia troppo tardi. La Madonna ci ha promesso la conversione della Russia, se questo paese verrà consacrato. Che differenza farebbe per il mondo intero? Abbiamo inoltre la promessa di un periodo di pace che verrà concesso all'umanità. Non c'è altro modo. Santo Padre, noi la ringraziamo per aver accettato il gravoso incarico di pontefice nella Chiesa romana e la supplichiamo di porre rimedio a questa situazione per il bene di tutto il suo gregge. Grazie per ciò che ha fatto.